what we're calling the parable of the two lost sons is Jesus trying to completely deconstruct everything that we've believed about sin and righteousness and salvation and God, and give us something else, something that we didn't see before, a new lens to look at life through, called the gospel, the good news that he brings through his death and his resurrection. And it's so easy for us to look at this passage and for our minds to go down a certain route. One of the mistakes we make is we look at the younger brother and we say, yeah, disregarding the father, disobeying, running off, wild living, prostitutes, runs out of money, doesn't go anywhere in life, ends up in a disaster, in a mess, needing to be supported by other people. Maybe he's got an STD. That's sin. We recognize that. That is sin. But when you get to the second part of the parable, you see the older brother doing some horrible things himself. There he is. His father is celebrating, has invited all his guests. There's this massive banquet, and he refuses to go in. In fact, his father has to be called out of the banquet because he's making such a scene and ask, why won't you come in? So he's publicly embarrassing his father on the greatest day of his life, waving his finger, angry. Imagine he'd be shouting and accusing his father of all sorts of things in front of his guests, disrespecting him. And it's so interesting, isn't it, how in life we normally have our favorite list of sins. I think that everybody does. And it's interesting, there's normally groupings. You know, some people say, well, yeah, wild living and drunkenness and sexual immorality, drugs, self-indulgence in that way, that's sin. You know, that's sin, and they're not concerned about a whole lot of other stuff. Other people make a different list and they say, well, you know, unfair labor practice, that's sin. Using the environment badly, that's also wrong. Or prejudice, racial prejudice, or prejudice against people because of how much money they have, that's sin, and they're not too worried about the other things. They think that those things are fine. And it's so interesting how we have these selective lists of sins, and we normally pick the stuff that we don't battle with, and so we make for ourselves a little righteous community. And Jesus in this parable just will not let anyone off the hook. He's trying to show the older brothers that you guys are sinners too. The younger brother and the older brother, you're both sinners. You're both wrong. You're both lost, and there's a way home for both of you. The older brother's sin is very real, but in many ways it's more difficult to recognize than the younger brother's sin. His sin is kind of a clean sin. It's kind of a religious sin. It's a moral sin. It's a culturally acceptable sin, if you like. But it is very real sin. Look at what goes on here, and let's unpack it a bit. Verse 25, meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of his servants and asked him what was going on. Often, older brothers are found just doing the right thing. They get lost in a place of obedience. He wasn't at the banquet. He was busy working for the good of the estate. And he probably felt pretty rotten about that he was working and everyone else was partying. That's sometimes a sign of older brother's sin. So he called one of his servants, and they said, your brother has come. He replied, your father has killed the fatted calf because he has him back safe and sound. The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, look, you, in brackets, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fatted calf for him. It's so interesting that the older brother uses this word slaving about himself. He sees himself as a slave. Funny, the younger brother who was going to be made a son by the father again, he sees him, he wants to be a slave, so that he can become a son, gets given the sonship. But the older brother is a son, but he sees himself as a slave. There's something about older brother sin that says, I am a slave. I am someone who just works and works and works and works and works, and I don't have any reward for it. This is what the older brother was saying. He's saying, look how this younger son has been blessed. My younger brother's been blessed so much, and yet he hasn't earned any of it. Me, I've worked hard. I've never disobeyed your orders. I've done the right thing this whole time. When am I going to see some of the reward from my work? And so older brothers have this thing in their hearts that the harder I work, the more God ought to reward me. And the language of our hearts, if we're lost in an older brother lost way, is I work harder than other people, I'm more righteous than other people, I avoid sin more than other people, and of course that's normally our selective list of sins, and we make this case to say, God, you owe me good things here, a reasonably good life when I'm here, and to take me to heaven when I die. And if we see other people not working as hard as we do or being as righteous as we are, and they get reward, we get angry. We say that's not fair. We protest even at God. Maybe you'd never think of it like that. But in the language of your heart, in your heart of hearts, you're really saying, God, you're not fair. And you're trying to earn your salvation. And so if the language of your heart is that, Jesus Christ may be your moral example. You may look up to him and say, wonderful, I want to be like you, I want to live like you lived. He may be an inspiration to you. He may be someone that gives you a whole new way that you want to live, but he is definitely not your Savior. You're your own Savior. You're trying to use good works, good things that you do to earn your right to be God's child. You are not saved by Jesus' sacrifice for you. You're saved by the good stuff that you feel you've done. And of course, that can't save you at all. You can be lost by trying to be good. He's talking about his younger brother in disparaging terms. Hey, I'm better than him, and he gets blessed in a way that I don't get blessed. He gets your favor, and I actually deserve it. And there's something about an older brother kind of lostness heart that says, I want to compare myself to other people. And I want to add this all up into some big math sum, and that results in a sense of anger and a sense of superiority. We always want to use things to feel better than other people. We always want to use things to push ourselves into the limelight, to be proud somehow, to have a spirit that feels better than others. And so it's a real insecurity in our hearts. The response of the Father here is so gracious. I mean, he is being publicly insulted by his son, robbed of his dignity, and he had every right to react here, but he doesn't. Look how he responds. Verse 31, my son, the Father said. He doesn't say, hey, you, who are you to talk to me like that? He says, my son. Gentle, loving, reaching out to his son in grace. You are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again, was lost and now is found. We're talking about how an elder brother type person can be self-righteous, can use their hard work or their moral standing or their acceptance into the community as a weapon to exclude other people, or a position from which they judge other people. So we're talking about people being really judgmental, but it's so interesting how the temptation can also be to be judgmental towards judgmental people and to be self-righteous towards self-righteous people. And so if you're a younger brother type person and you want to wave your finger at older brother type people and say, hey, you're judgmental, I don't want to hang out with you, I don't like those people or that community because they're really judgmental, that's an incredibly judgmental thing to say as well. And it's so beautiful how the Father is so gracious even to someone who's so ungracious, and how he's so gentle even with someone who isn't gentle. The thing that they really need is gentleness. That's how he melts his heart. But at the same time, he gets to the root of what is really going on in the older brother's heart. Look at how he answers this long list of complaints. I've worked for you, I've tried really hard to earn this and I never got it. He says, you are always with me. In other words, am I not enough for you? And everything I am and everything that it means to be part of my family, is that not enough for you? Is that not enough reward for you? Doesn't that fill your heart with enough joy? You see, the younger brother really, in saying, give me my share of the estate, was saying, I don't want relationship with you, Father. I just want your stuff. I just want the good stuff. And so you translate that into God terms, saying, God, I don't really want you. I just want to do my own thing in life. I want my own life, and I want good things to happen in my life, but I don't want you. But the older brother is saying exactly the same thing too. He doesn't want the Father and relationship with the Father primarily. He wants the Father's stuff. He's just doing it in a different way to the younger brother. He's just been doing it by staying at home and being good and trying to twist the Father's arm and say, hey, look how hard I work for you. Give me your stuff. I want a fatted calf to celebrate with my friends as well. Hey, it's not fair. And so he also doesn't want the Father. He wants the Father's stuff. And the Father reaches out to him and say, hey, there's something more beautiful that can be given to you. And in fact, he says, all I have is yours. In other words, don't you understand that good things don't come into your life through tireless hard work and through trying to push ahead, be better than other people, and putting other people down and excluding other people and having this insecurity in your heart? Good things just come into your life because I love you and I want to be enough for you and I want to express the fullness of my love for you. And you need to let go of your need to earn my favor. So if the language of your heart is an older brother type language, the way home for you, the way for you to come from outside of the banquet where God is celebrating with people and step inside and just share in the Father's joy and the celebration and his extravagant goodness and his extravagant grace, is to say, Jesus, I want you to be my Savior. I want you to be the only reason that I expect good things to come to me from God. You've earned it. It hasn't been my earning it. It's been a free gift of God's grace.